Alright, g'day everyone. So this is our second episode of 000, the war inside and out. Mark Andrews, how are you, champion?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks mate.
Good
Yourself?
mate. Yeah, I'm good. Here we are again in Kurrajong. We tried for last Thursday, but it was pissing down rain, so we had to put it off a bit. But mate, just a recap from episode 1. So this is a podcast where we're going to share our policing experiences. Yourself 24 years, myself 8 years, jobs that we went to, experiences that we had, and also past and present struggles with PTSD and what we've both been through with that. So we want to actually share this because we know how many people do struggle with this, and we want to be able to say that you're not alone, and the more people that can share their stories and be open about the mental health, while being in the police and then afterwards, if we can help one person, then that's going to be good.
Definitely.
Just wanted to also say that if you are suffering from PTSD or you feel like you may be, just before you watch this, or if there are any triggers in these podcasts for you, watch these with a support person. Also too, if you are a bit hesitant as to watching it, just contact me beforehand and I can let you know what the content is of the podcast, so you can determine whether you want to watch it or not. But definitely watch it with a support person. And if something does trigger you during the podcast and you feel like you need immediate help, then definitely contact LIFELINE, which is 13 11 14. Mate, so what we're going to speak about today is 2 jobs. A job that you went to that's caused you some significant ongoing issues. I'm going to speak about a job that I went to, and then we'll chat about something that was a little bit lighter or a bit funny or weird, a job that we went to later on. But wanted to follow up from last week that you spoke about going to a double fatal at Braidwood.
Yep.
Do you want to share that experience with us?
Yeah, mate, that's I think everyone sort of mentions going to that job that just is the one that breaks you.
Yeah.
I think that was the one that broke me. Done over 10 years in the police at that point. Plenty of fatalities, deceased, a lot of crappy jobs, but this one was the one that I guess my cup was full, and this is the one that overflowed it.
Yeah. So you're a one-manner down at Braidwood?
I was one-manner at Braidwood, working by myself. I can see it as clear as day. It was Sunday afternoon. I had the footy on the radio. I was in the 4-wheel drive, just out on the dirt roads at the back of Braidwood, checking properties and all that. Call comes over the radio. Normal, double beeps, and then usually they minimise what the job is to begin with, but it was just car into a tree, possible person's trapped. It was just the other side of Braidwood, about 5 kilometres along the King's Highway. So yeah, responded, started heading towards it. As I said, I can remember the day clear as. It was freezing cold. It was a sunny day, but freezing cold. The day before we'd had snow at Braidwood and that, so it was winter time, and the footy was on, which I was enjoying.
Yeah.
My Sunday afternoons listening to the footy.
Yeah.
But that all changed. Like I said, when you get the beeps come over, that's all forgotten. Straight on to work mode. Started heading towards the job. On the way through to the job, came over the radio. Possible 2 persons deceased. ETA to the job, whatever it was, can't remember at the time, but continued to drove through the township of Braidwood. My wife at the time, Diane, she heard the sirens obviously go through and put the radio on to hear what was going on. Then I remember getting to the other side of Braidwood. It's only a small town, so it was only a couple 100 metres, and then came over. possible 2 people deceased, possibility of a third person, an infant, possibly in the back of the car, unable to determine.
What are you feeling right at that moment?
Mate, right at that point then I just saw, I just didn't
Before
want
you get to the scene, yeah.
Yeah, before I even got to the scene, as soon as I heard that information then, because mate, just hearing those words, straight away I just thought, I don't want to go to this. Like I'm 1 out, reports are coming through, there's already 2 dead bodies there, which was fine, but then to hear that there's going to be a possible third and it's going to be an infant, I'm just thinking, oh shit, I don't want to, there's no way I want to fucking go and see this. Like,
Where's your nearest backup from there?
My nearest backup was an hour away from Queanbeyan.
Wow.
There was other police at Bungendore or Captain's Flat, but they weren't rostered on that day, so they, the bloke from Bungendore ended up being called in later on to assist with the accident scene, obviously with traffic diversions and things like that. But at that point there, you're 1 out by yourself, so you've got to think, you know, well, I'm going to need this, I'm going to need that and stuff like that. And I was doing that all the way through, you know, well, if it's this, I'm going to have to call out, you know, that radio had already said, you know, ambulance were on their way, fire were on their way and rescue on the way, but out in the country town, like, they're not permanents. So
no, yeah, that's right.
The fire brigade take a time for the people to come in, you know, get their staff there, then they'll head out there. Ambos, they'll permanent, but again, if they're not at another job, they're still a fair way off. And so, mate, yeah, I was on the way to the job, still going, you know, thought processes going through my mind, you know, what needs to be done and, you know, what to expect when I get there and stuff like that. And then, but as soon as I heard the word an infant being involved, I just sort of, and at that time, which is another issue which we can talk about another time, my daughter was very young at the time. And I guess that's why it hit me, is because, oh shit, you know, like, I've got an infant now. Like, this is only now through reflecting and having done a lot of work with psychiatrists and that I'm able to realise that that's probably why I thought, like all the other jobs, like you just go to a respond, it's my job.
Yeah.
But I just didn't want to go to this job. Like, it was just pure and simple, but there was no other option. There was no one else, I had to go to it. I couldn't just get on the radio and say, look, you know, not going.
Yeah.
But then, you know, I've driven up the road, it was about 5 k's out of Braidwood on the King's Highway. I don't know if anyone's been to Braidwood, but the King's Highway goes in from both sides, one side from Bateman's Bay, the other side from Canberra, so I was heading out towards Bateman's Bay. Then you start seeing up ahead the line of traffic, so you know you're getting closer to it.
The heart rate starts to go up.
No, the adrenaline's going. Like,
yeah.
Obviously, as soon as you put those lights and sirens on, you know what the adrenaline's like in the car and that. And as I said, like, I'd pull up there and just see this car just absolutely totaled. Like, it was just into this tree. One of those big poplar trees had pretty much, the engine bay had just wrapped itself around the tree. The tree was right through the middle of the car, and it concertinaed all the way up. I got out of the car, went up. There was obviously there was a lot of witnesses and people have got out of their cars, obviously what's going on. People just hanging up, standing around, really not doing anything because there was nothing that could be done, I suppose. And I just remember the first thing I saw was these kids' toys on the ground, and they were little miniatures of Winnie the Pooh, Piglet, Tigger, Eeyore, and they were very, very similar to the ones my daughter had at the time. And straight away my thought was Rachel, which is my daughter. I just had started having these visions of her being in the car, and then from that point then it was just like an out-of-body experience. It's hard to explain. It was just I was present but I wasn't. And then that training and that you just go into, like, you just do your job, but I wasn't really, I was just going through them. I don't know, it was just a whole weird experience altogether. And then at that stage I was being pretty much going to have to treat it as a rescue, because when I saw the car I thought, shit, there's a possibility that it could be an infant or a young child in the back seat of that car. Based on the toys there, like, check the passenger and the driver, they'll definitely deceased, would have died on impact. And then finally ambos and fireys and rescuers arrived, and we started working on the car to try and we'll see if there was anyone else in the back seat. Probably worked on it for about 45 minutes before we could actually establish that there was definitely no one in the back seat in there. But
how did you feel then when you're?
There was a sense of relief that it wasn't.
Yeah.
But the whole time looking through there, all I could envision was my daughter being in that back seat. And just on the impact of this just didn't affect me then, but to this day it still affects my daughter because she has a guilt that it blames because I felt her presence at that scene. She feels that she's responsible for my PTSD, and there's been an incident where I can't remember it, but I got to believe my daughter because there'd be no way she'd lie, that I'd said to her like, it's your fault that I have PTSD, and that pretty much cuts you out because it's not her fault at all. It's just my love for her and my genuine love of not wanting anything to hurt or happen to her, and then feeling that that was going to be her there. It was just pretty overwhelming.
Because after that, you were using alcohol a bit to cope?
Mate, over a period of time after that, I started to see a psychiatrist and counselling and all that. They prescribed me medications, heavy, like Valium, Stilnox and all that to sleep. And I was mixing that with vodka and alcohol and stuff like that. And I don't remember saying that to my daughter, but as I said, I've got no reason to question her about me saying it, because I possibly did say it when I was in one of those states, which doesn't excuse it, but and to this day she still has problems accepting my PTSD was possibly because of her, but it's nothing to do with her. It was what I'd attended, and it was just my love for her that I just felt the worst that she would be there, and that was only because of my love and care for her that I just didn't want that. But it wasn't her, that she wasn't at the scene. She didn't make me go to the scene. All the things that happened at the scene and afterwards wasn't because of her. It was just those toys reminded me of her.
Yep.
But there's so much more to it than just those toys and the thought of my daughter being in the back seat of that car, that even if those toys weren't there, I think there'd be still enough from that accident to have been the one that tipped me over anyway.
Yeah.
Because we've, and to this day, like I can't look at Winnie the Pooh things without getting shivers or reminders of that scene. And I found out later on from, it was actually the driver's, it was his toys. He just had a thing about collecting Winnie the Pooh stuff. It was just a collection he used to have, and he used to have them on the back seat of the car. There was nothing sinister about it. It was just, and as I said, there's nothing sinister about Winnie the Pooh, but for me, I'm not scared of him, but it creates so much trauma and bad memory. Like, it's just.
And how long ago was this?
This was 1999.
So 21 years ago, and this is the thing about PTSD, is the triggers, there's no time limit, there's no statute of limitations on them. It could be 3 years, 5 years, 21 years, 30 years.
No, I don't think I'll ever get over them.
No.
That's the thing, like I said, I've tried, but every time I see them, whether it's just all of a sudden I think about it and I shouldn't think about that, and just even the fact that you're thinking that you shouldn't think about it, it puts you there.
Yeah.
So I went to the hospital and did quite a bit of work on it, so I'm able to talk about it, but it broke me.
Yeah.
And that was the one, like I said, the glass was full and that just tipped it over. I'd been to heaps of deceased before. That was the first one that I'd attended as a family man.
Yeah.
And that resilience where you're young, you got the uniform on, you feel like Superman, nothing bad's going to happen to you. I think that'll just come crumbling down that day, because I saw it from a whole completely different set of eyes.
Yeah. And a lot of people and cops and first responders in metropolitan areas, you have the benefit of having a partner there with you, or someone that you can, that you're working with, that you can deal with that situation together. But when you're out on your own, it's just you, and everyone from the public's looking at you, expecting you to fix everything.
Oh, you do, mate. It's,
and you're just trying to manage it yourself, trying to understand what's going on yourself.
Mate, you're doing everything. You're trying to update radio with what's going on, like they're asking you what's happening, and you're trying to give them updates all the time, and then you've got to coordinate the other emergency responses that are there, and then I had to get Highway Patrol to come in from Queanbeyan to help with the King's Highway is the main arterial road between Canberra and Bateman's Bay. So that was banking up pretty quickly because it was a Sunday afternoon, so a lot of people were heading back to Canberra from the weekend and that. And then I remember AIS said they were going to respond, but they were responding from Wollongong, which was a couple of hours away. So yeah, as you said, like normally if you've got a partner there, you're sort of like, well, you take care of this, I'll take care of that. But when you work for yourself, you're it. You've got to take care of the lot.
Yeah.
So then obviously, like, yeah, we'd established there was no one else in the car. We had the two deceased in the car, and one of them had a phone, a Nokia, which was ringing, and it kept popping up with the name Mum and Dad on it. And so this becomes another trigger, is that Nokia, the old Nokia ringtone. I can't stand the sound of it, because this phone just rung non-stop, because obviously expecting their son home, not home, they're ringing. And I have a trigger now, if I ring my kids and they don't answer, I know they've gone for a trip or something like that, my anxiety and my heart just starts beating. And they know when they drive out to their grandfather's farm that I need to know if they're there safely and all that sort of stuff. Like, and like a parent has its concerns and all that sort of stuff, but mine are over the top now, because there's that, like, I just feel if they don't answer the phone, is there a copper there looking at the phone saying, oh, it's Dad, I can't answer. And my thought when I saw Mum and Dad popping up on this phone was, I can't answer. Like, what am I to say? You know, and this phone, I couldn't turn it off. I couldn't shut the bloody thing up, and it just kept ringing and ringing. And it's just, even today, like, if I hear that ringtone, like some people use it as a retro ringtone, it startles the fuck out of me. Like, it actually scares the shit out of me, because it, as I said, like, it just kept popping up, Mum and Dad, and I said, I couldn't, what could I say?
Yeah.
You know, so I'm trying to avoid the phone, and it just wouldn't stop ringing. I ended up putting it in the truck just to get rid of the bloody thing, but every time I'd go back to the truck to get something, the thing would be ringing or something like that, and they just were constantly ringing, obviously.
The parents are just desperate to know.
Well, if you don't hear from your son, he's meant to be home from a certain time. And I know, it's like and my kids probably hate me for it, but if I don't hear from them, I'll keep ringing, and that, and probably become a pain in the ass to them. But, and as I said, like, again, at that point, it was probably the first time, and it was the first fatality I attended as a parent. And
yeah.
It was gutting me, like, to see the actual Mum and Dad popping up, and then just thinking, what do you say to these people?
Yeah. Did the family arrive at the scene?
No. We kept the well, at this stage, because the family were in Canberra, that's where they're from, the two boys that were killed. And they're actually the same age as my boys now, which the boys have just got their licences, so I've got that fear of them. Got that fear of getting that phone call at midnight, or the police knocking at the front door at midnight now. And the whole time that they did their hours to get their driver's licence, as much as I wanted to engage with them, I couldn't, because then if something was to happen to them, I'd feel partially responsible that I helped them get their licence.
Wow.
Even though it's something that you can't deny someone, it's their liberty and it's their right to have, and that I just, as silly as it sounds, I just felt if something was to happen to them, I'd feel like I was contributing. Like,
do you speak to them about this?
They know.
Yeah, they know.
They understand. I've told them that, and I've apologised to them that I haven't been able to be as engaging as what I'd want to be in terms of getting their licences and that.
Do they understand?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, they've told me they understand and that, but as a father, it's something that's difficult to, well, I find it difficult to accept because it's something I always thought I'd grow up and do with my sons, you know, and even my daughter, like, I'd engage in helping them learn to drive, learn to get their independence and all that sort of stuff, yet I have that fear of that because, as I said, like the love I have for my children's endless, and if that was to be taken away from me, I just don't know how people recover from losing a child.
Were there many people, say witnesses, bystanders at the scene?
No, there was, and there was one woman in particular. She was the car behind their car, and she just said that they'd obviously fallen asleep. They were travelling about 100 k's an hour, and the car just slowly started going across the road and straight into a tree with no braking or nothing like that. And they said bitterly cold day, that they had the heater on in the car. They said after speaking to the parents that they'd left Canberra about 4 o'clock in the morning, went to Bateman's Bay, and they fished all day down at Bateman's Bay, and they were on their way back home that afternoon. And they said being up all day, fishing, tired, salt air and all that sort of stuff, cold, heater on. Like, you know, it's like when you're in the car and you're tired and you got the heater on, you just want to go to sleep. So it was just sleep, you know.
All the ingredients to induce fatigue.
Yeah, exactly. And then, and that's like two young boys. They'd done nothing. They went for a day fishing. They had a good time. They were probably enjoying their life and that, and just fell asleep at the wheel, and just it's all over like that. It's pretty hard to comprehend how life can just end like that.
Yeah.
You know, like it's just there 1 minute, they're having the time, they're probably having the best day, you know, doing something they absolutely love, and then in a split second it's gone. And it's not just their life, that it's their life's gone, and just the residue of that and how it's affected other people from there. Like the witness that saw that, she was an absolute mess. I had to get the ambulance to take her up to Braidwood Hospital to get her some counselling straight away and some support, because she was just beside herself. Like she was saying should she have done something, but they died on impact, there was nothing they could do. But she actually saw the whole thing, so it was like I was there afterwards and saw but to actually see it unfold and happen would be a different level of exposure.
Yeah. And the immediate reality of the situation once they look inside that car.
Yeah, well, she'd never seen anything like that before.
Yeah.
I said, like, even the injuries that the boys sustained, even for me, and I'd been to a lot of things, it was horrific, it was severe. One of them, like later on that scene, that night when we were removing the bodies from the car, and I had to take all the personal possessions and put them in the exhibit bags. One of them, from the impact, he had a crucifix that got embedded into his chest from the impact from the steering wheel, and it was actually into his chest, like it gone into a cavity, and I had to like pull that out, and the cross was bent from so it just shows the force of the impact, like the steering wheel hit him in the chest and bent this cross into his actual chest, and had to pull that out and obviously bag it all up and take it back to the station and stuff. So their injuries were significant. There was no way they would have, and the witness blamed herself that she should have done some CPR. They would have died on impact. There's no doubt in the world. It was just, like as I said, the tree was a massive tree, and the top 3 or 4 metres of the tree had been, like, with the whipping effect, had snapped off and was about 30 odd metres up in the paddock. Like, that was the impact of the, like, and no braking, doing 100 kilometres an hour and coming to a straight stop. Like, it was, pretty horrific, their injuries sustained.
Yeah.
So,
how long were you at the scene for?
We were there for hours. I think it was about 8 hours at the scene. Maybe, yeah, probably about 8 hours, because I got think I got into Canberra around about 1 o'clock in the morning or something like that. Which I had to go to the morgue in Canberra.
Yeah, so people that don't know, not only do you deal with what you're seeing at the scene and coordinate all of that, it's then conveying the bodies and then
formally identifying
and catching up with the families.
Yeah, so ACT police to go and notify the families that their son's probably been involved in an accident, and that for them to come and meet me at the morgue there in Canberra. So by the time I got into there, like I went back to the station first and booked up all the their property. And again, while I was booking all that up, like the phone was still effing ringing. The family had been notified, but I think they were still trying. I think they were just hoping.
Just hope.
It was just hope that their son would answer the phone and it wasn't their son that was involved. And that still haunts me to this day. As I said, that ringtone, I hate it. And then thankfully, but he came out, accident investigation unit, he came back to the station with me. There was nothing they could do because there was no offending, the offending driver was deceased. It was just simple fatigue, no other factors involved. So, but he did all the measurements. He came back to the station. Thankfully, he did the event for me, which was one less thing I had to do. So I was grateful to him that he did all that. I'd taken photos, but he also took professional photos and all that as well of the scene, which we were able to give to the coroner and all that sort of stuff at a later date. But then I had to drive into Canberra and after doing all that and then meet the parents and meet them at the morgue and have them identify the bodies to myself so then I could formally identify them to the coroner the next day. And again, that was the first time I'd had someone identify their bodies, or actually identify their kids' bodies, and it was the first time I did it as a parent. So my pain, I could feel their pain. When I got there, they were sort of still in a bit of denial, obviously, and they were obviously still hopeful that it wasn't their kids that were in the morgue. And I guess you just hold out for that hope that there is a mistake and it's not their kids. So I took the first family, because the way the morgue was, there was only one viewing room, and as I said, I was one out, so I could only do one at a time. So I took the first mum and dad into the viewing room, and straight away they burst out into tears. And once they did that, because it was not that big, the morgue area, I could hear the mother in the other room start screaming, because she obviously, the realisation that it was their kids had set in. Mate, at that point I was tearing up. I just didn't know what to say or how to comfort them, and then I still had to go back to the other parents, and all I wanted to do was go to the bathroom and just cry. It was just a completely different experience, this one, for me. Like I said, been to other deceased, I did, and you just go through. This one, I could feel their pain as a parent.
Yeah.
And no, I don't know what it feels like to lose a child, and I don't want to feel that, but through seeing how they were responding, it's just something I would never ever want to have to experience. Yeah, and that just cut me up, and then obviously I had to go get the other family and do the same thing with them and formally identify their son. And then that was a couple of hours, and then by that stage, mate, I hopped back in the truck for the 50 minute drive back out to Braidwood, and it's probably about 3 o'clock in the morning by that stage.
So up until this stage, has anyone offered to support you?
No.
Was there any communication from anyone above you?
No.
The
only communication I got was just, what's the situation? Pretty much, it was pretty much just professional. Or, you know, it's just, what's the situation? How long before the King's Highway will be open? You know, how long do you think you're going to be at the hospital for? Blah, blah, blah. Pretty much, because then they start looking at, well, how much overtime you're going to incur and all that sort of stuff. Like, it all becomes logistics, not welfare or anything like that.
And there's just no one with you to be able to comfort
even
you,
just to talk or something
talk about it.
No one, nothing at all.
You're dealing with both families.
Well, I had both families. They knew each other, obviously, because their sons were friends and stuff like that. So I guess they had that comfort for each other.
Yeah.
I just had nothing. And it's such like I think we spoke about last week, when you deliver a death message. Well, I guess this is another death message there, but it's that awkwardness of not knowing what to say, and you just stand there and you just feel so useless and powerless. And mate, I said, I had tears in my eyes. Like, I just, you know, all I wanted to do was just cry with them. And but I was there, I had a job to do. Like, that's where a lot of people don't understand. Like, yeah, we're a copper, but we're also human. Like, and my human instincts at that time was I just wanted to cry. I just wanted to. But my cop instincts were, well, no, you can't. You've got to do your job. And that's a conflict of your emotions. On one hand, you just want to allow just to come out, and on the other hand, you're suppressing all that just to get the job done.
And the distance that you have to travel from Braidwood to Canberra, and then Canberra back to Braidwood, you're on your own. You've been emotionally, physically exhausted from the whole day, and you're just expected to drive on your own. There's no support there for yourself.
No.
You've just been to a double fatality due to fatigue.
Yeah,
and here you are,
pretty much,
exposing yourself to the same risk.
Mate, I was exhausted. But there's no way I could sleep. But then again, like I said, with fatigue and usually fatigue-related accidents and that too, it's just those microseconds that you just.
That's right.
It doesn't. You don't have to go into full-on sleep for it to end badly in that. But driving back out to Braidwood, mate, I did break down. Mate, I was bawling my eyes out in the car. It was probably, I guess, in a way, it was good that I did it, that I was by myself, because I was allowed to do that. But again, as you said, there was just that aloneness. Like, there was no support. It would have been nice to maybe have someone there to talk to or unload a bit of what I was feeling and that. But mate, even on the way back, and this just shows that, mate, you're there to do a job, nothing more. You're just a number. Management, the organisation don't care. On the way back, they hit me up to go and do an alarm. Like, there was an alarm going off at one of the shops in Braidwood.
Wow.
Knowing that I was already on overtime, I'd worked hours over when I was supposed to have finished. I'd just been to the morgue. I'd just identified 2 dead bodies that were seen at an accident scene. I still had to go back to the station and still complete the 79As for the coroner for the next day. So I still had paper. The job still wasn't finished then, and you know, I still had an hour's drive to get back even to the station. And then they still hit me up to go and do another job before I even got back to do that. And yeah, it was just.
What did that make you feel?
I mean, I was pissed off. Like, I just said, I copy that. Do that. And it was just a stupid alarm had gone off. But then the thoughts are going through my mind. I'm thinking, well, if it's an alarm, not many alarms go off in Braidwood. Maybe it's a break-in, and maybe I'm going to end up catching someone then. So that's the thing. I could end up getting caught with another job. I could have got there and caught someone doing a break-in or something, you know. And
you don't know what that job is.
No, you don't. It's just a simple alarm to some, but you know yourself with a job. Like, when you get an alarm at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, it's usually a break-in or something like that. Or so there could have been anything. Like, I could have got there and confronted an offender or something like that, or anything. But No, I did do the alarm, but I can't even, my mind was elsewhere. I can't even, I wouldn't even know the details of it. Like, I know it was one of the shops in the main street of Braidwood. I did the checks, and mate, I think we would have done the bare minimum check. I don't think I would have really looked into it that much because I really didn't care. All I was factoring in was that I just had to go back to the station and do whatever paperwork I had to do, and then
Of course, yeah.
and then once I'd finished that, then I'd go home, and then the next morning I've got to get up and I've got to go back to Canberra then to identify the body to the coroner. So I was going to get no sleep. So I pretty much...
Was there any support for that?
No, none. I got back to the station, told radio pretty much back at the station, off for the shift, and that was it. That was it. Nothing, no phone calls, finished the paperwork. I went back home, Died, hopped up and got me a drink, which I think was a scotch or something like that, because she'd heard everything going on over the radio, and then I don't think I got any sleep. Went to bed probably for an hour or two, and up the next day and had to head into Canberra, sorry. Queanbeyan was where our head station was, but had to go into Canberra and identify the bodies to the coroner.
So there's no offer of taking you to Canberra, someone driving you out there?
No, mate, I had to do it myself. Like,
Yeah,
I had the truck there. I was in a police residence next door to the police station. So the next morning, like I said, no sleep, had attended that. Emotionally, I was drained. Physically, I was drained, but I still had to get up the next morning and still do the job. And then after that, the car was taken back. We had the holding yard back there at Braidwood, and the car was taken back there. And there's just so many triggers that come from this one. As I said, the boys had been down fishing for the day in Canberra, and they had a bucket of burley in the back seat, in the station wagon in the back of the car, and obviously the fish they'd caught. And made after a day or two, the smell, even simple things of going down the shops to where you've got the fish markets there or something like that, just the smell of the fish, or even the thought of burley and stuff like that, mate, again, another thing I've missed out with my boys is, and even Rachel, like if she'd love to have come, is to have taken them fishing, but I tried it a couple of times, but my thoughts would always just go back to this accident. And my boys always spoke about wanting to do fishing and stuff like that, and I felt shit as a father, shit as a parent, that I wasn't able to do these things that as simple as wanting to take my kids there. I felt like I was just being a selfish arsehole for not taking my kids to just go fishing and enjoy their company and that. And it was just not that I really wanted to, I just couldn't. And I harbour guilt for that because you know, as a dad and a parent, I just wanted to engage with my kids, but just from this one job, like, I couldn't comfortably take them fishing. I didn't really want to help them get their licences.
How long was the car in the holding yard for?
Mate, probably a fortnight, because the car was taken back there, and again we had to wait for the families obviously to come and retrieve the car. And then obviously they came back, and when they retrieved the car, they had to retrieve, I gave them all the possessions of the two boys, and when I went to get the property out of the safe, thankfully it wasn't in front of them, because I realised that the crucifix that I'd taken out of the boy's chest, it was still had blood and like gunk, like fatty tissue and all that still on it. So I was up at the back of the police station washing all that off so I could give it to them at least clean. And then I tried to straighten it out as best I could, but it was just bent from the impact. And so there's another trigger, like a crucifix, and I've been in St John God of Hospital a couple of times, and there's crucifixes all over the place. Like even now the staff that know that they'll take them, the ones that are in the rooms, they'll actually either cover them or take them off completely for me, because they know that it brings back those memories. And I've got a psychologist that I go and see, and she wears a crucifix, and she knows when I'm not there because I won't look at her or pay her attention. She knows that her crucifix is out, so she has to put it in her top or something like that, so I don't see it. But
Yeah.
so there's just another trigger just from, and this is all just from the one job. There's just so many different triggers from it, and it's just these things that I've been to hospital, I've dealt with them and stuff like that. But it helps you manage them, but it doesn't. They don't go away, and that's the thing. I don't know how many times I've gone into a shop and I've seen a crucifix and I've just walked straight back out, or as I said, the startleness of that Nokia ringtone, it scares the shit out of me hearing it. It scares me when I ring my kids and they don't answer their phone if I know they've gone away somewhere.
What happens inside you when you say hear that tone? Is it your heart rate increases?
My heart rate, my chest tightens. I get those goosebumps, but then I start sweating.
Yeah.
So you get those chills, but you start sweating. And then straight away, you just think of the accident.
Yeah.
And it's the same, like I can go into Target and that, but as soon as I see like a Winnie the Pooh or something like that, and you try not to think about it, but you can't not associate it with it. And then I don't know whether that's the mind saying, well, you know, you're not allowed to think about the accident. And then because you say that to yourself, you do start thinking about the accident. But that's where I'm confused about, is it, am I being triggered or am I making it being? But when you get that tightness in the chest and the goosebumps, that's definitely a trigger.
Yeah, for sure.
And then I had the witness that, like, I was getting no support, but I had the elderly lady that witnessed the accident. She was ringing me daily because she had the number to the police station, but then when I wasn't at the police station, the phone would divert to home.
Right.
Because I was on call. So the phone would divert usually to the home, and then I'd answer it, and that was causing a bit of tension with Diane at the time, because I had this lady ringing me all the time wanting to know what was going, you know, what should she do, how should she cope, and I couldn't help it. Like, as much as I was trying to listen to her and offer her some advice and stuff, I was struggling with it myself. And
yeah,
she obviously saw me because I was the first point of contact for her and reassurance for her, and the fact that I sent her to the hospital to get some treatment, she obviously saw that I was there to help her and stuff like that. But
yeah,
and I tried my best to do as much as I could for her, but mate, it was hurting me just trying to deal with her, but struggle with my own emotions at the same time. Like, I was getting no support. I was on my own, and I had to go past that car for 2 weeks. I had daily reminders of it all the time. I was thankful when the parents finally came and got it and took it away. It was like a massive release. Even Diane, I know she was relieved when it finally went.
Yeah. How did it affect Di at the time?
Yeah, it affected her a lot.
It was at a one-man station, and without even, you can't help but the family become involved in it.
Yeah, well, I said she knew, she'd heard what was going on. She'd heard, and I think it was upsetting for her that this woman was contacting me so often and trying to seek reassurance and that. And I think it frustrated Diane a bit, and she said some things that I know she's apologised for since, and knows that she didn't mean to say them and stuff like that. It did hurt at the time, but I understand where it was coming from with her and that. And I guess one of the things is I should have opened up my feelings to her a lot more.
Were you trying to protect her?
Yeah, you do. Because you're feeling the pain, it's like you don't want to inflict that onto other people.
Yes.
You sort of like carry that burden because you think, well, I don't want other people to feel pity for me, or I don't want people to feel, and not only that, like, I guess that's the ego side of it. You just don't want to show you're feeling weak or anything like that. And it is just an ego thing because, mate, the stuff that you and me have seen and other police and emergency services and that have all gone through and stuff like that, if it doesn't affect you, you can't be human. Like, seriously, like, to see some of the stuff not many people witness and that, if it doesn't affect you, mate, there's something missing. Like, if you haven't got that empathy or something in you to understand that is upsetting or it's hurting or something like that, and you can just go on as if nothing's happened. I don't see how that's real. Like it's
part of the reason why we're doing this is because we are now talking with police who are currently in the job, who receive very little to no support, and the same things are still happening today as they were back then. And it's the little care things for, you know, police officers and ambulance officers and New South Wales Fire and Rescue, these jobs that you're going to, but it's the, you know, having the awareness of someone being there to support you and take you to Canberra the next day. Like, you not have to go through that again yourself. It's, you know, okay, you've got to go to Canberra and identify the bodies. Well, there needs to be a boss or someone there to be able to just ride that with you. You know, just the little parts of care. And then that, so by us doing this, hopefully it's going to bring awareness to also getting help while you're at the scene, while you're doing the job, and then immediately afterwards. And then, you know, just these little care things that can help not take on so much of the pain yourself and then just keep it all inside.
No, you do. You take on so much of it. And over a period of time, when you go to numerous of them, and it just builds up and builds up and builds up and builds up and builds up, and then eventually it's got to come out eventually. And as I said, this was probably the one that broke me at that point, up to that point. But since then I've gone through a lot of other counselling sessions and hospitalisations where I've realised there's been a lot of other incidences before even this one, which were a lot worse than this one. But I think because I was young, ego and all that sort of stuff, I didn't allow it to get to me, but it was always there inside of me, and I was just waiting to come out. And it did come out in unhealthy ways, in toxic ways and stuff like that. Like, it wasn't just suppressing it and not talking about it and being a he-man and thinking, well, you don't talk about your feelings. Did fuck all. At the end of the day, it may have taken 10, 12, 13 years, whatever it was, but it all came out in a bad way. Whereas if I dealt with it at the time in a healthy way, an environment, that probably wouldn't have had the same effects. But because I allowed it to, I didn't want to talk about it because I didn't want to show that I was weak. I didn't want to show that, you know, I had emotions or anything like that. And I was brought up, as I said, I joined the coppers, I was 18 at the academy. I'd only just turned 19 when I started, and I was told you don't show weakness, you know, you go and have a beer afterwards, and no one spoke about their emotions. It was all, you know, who could beat their chest the you know, loudest or whatever it was. There was just so much macho-ness about it and stuff like that. So you were scared to show it. Like, if you were to show any sides of emotion or anything like that, and a lot of the things we dealt with was done by black humour, you know. And I even actually feel guilty about that now, because I look back now and knowing that it was a coping mechanism, and I've been told by psychologists and psychiatrists that at the time it is healthy if it's done within a certain group. It's not an ideal thing to do, but it's an outlet. At least it's an outlet. But I still feel guilty that it seemed to be disrespectful to the deceased and to the family of the deceased. Even though they weren't privy of it, it still felt disrespectful, and I still harbour guilt for that. And that's the thing, like, that's the thing I can't let go of, is the guilt that I've got from attending a lot of these jobs where I couldn't help that lady that was suffering, that witnessed it, you know, like the family. Like, I just felt so guilty that I had to be the one to tell them and to show them their boys, you know, and not be able to do anything about it. And you feel guilty because you're the bearer of their bad news.
Yes, and I'll always remember that. If
I was to run them into the street, their memory of me is going to be, oh, that was a policeman that told us about.
Do you remember a time when you realised you were in trouble mentally from that job? Was it pretty immediate, or
I think,
was there a delay?
No, I think the decline from that job was fairly quick after that. As I said, I think that was sort of like, you know, the analogy is like over a Coke bottle. All the incidents you attend, you keep shaking it up, shaking it up, shaking it up, shaking it up, and eventually the cap's going to come off and it's just all going to come out. And I think that was the cap coming off in that one. Like, I just... I then sought help with a psychologist, and then was referred to a psychiatrist. And then off that, they told me to put a claim in for PTSD, and then with the police, obviously, the support they provided me was to send me an independent and to deny all, liability on it. And they sent me to the independent, and straight away the independent said, yeah, it's post-traumatic stress.
And you were clinically diagnosed with complex PTSD?
At that stage, yeah, because there was a number of other traumas as well. Like once I started speaking to my psychiatrist, that it was starting to unravel about other ones that I attended. So it was complex post-traumatic stress. Once the diagnosis was in from the independent, and the insurance and the police accepted that it was a work-related incident and it was workers' compensation, they put me back frontline. That was pretty much their support, was just to follow up whether it was legit or not. And once it was determined it was legit, okay, you can go back out frontline. So I then did another 13 years in the career. Not the back end of it, I was in Intel section, but I got back working, got a sergeant's job in City Central, but all the time there was still more and more incidences that you attend, more and more, traumas building and that. So even though I was identified as having post-traumatic stress, I was still being exposed to more traumas, and again, not being offered any assistance for it.
Was there any ongoing support, or
only the ones I sought?
Yeah.
And because it had been approved by workers' comp, at least it was paid for by the insurance company, not by the police. But at least if I was to go to my doctor, and that would be covered for my counselling. And then with all those sessions, mate, I never told anyone, like at work and that, and I think I surprised you the other week when I told you that. All those years that we were playing police footy and the blackball and all that sort of stuff, mate, I was seeing psychiatrists, I was taking medications, antidepressants, I was masking. I was masking what was actually going on with my life. And I started developing unhealthy traits and drinking. We used to drink a fair bit then.
So the combination of alcohol, prescription medication,
Mate, the self-medicating, it's bad.
continual exposure.
Yeah, the continual exposure, the cocktail of drinking and that, and when I was finally discharged from the police, the cocktail of drinking and the medications got worse, and that's when I think that I said those things to Rachel, which it's not. She needs to know it's not her fault. It is definitely not her fault, and I've never blamed her. And for me to have said that night, or whenever I said it, I obviously was just in a shit frame of mind, and I took it out on someone I should never have taken it out on. It's definitely never been my actual thought process that I blame her for it. So for me to have said that, it surprised me, but it's obviously just something I just said out of pure frustration or anger, and probably just frustration and anger with myself. And mixing, like drinking almost a bottle of vodka a night with sleeping tablets, and then my kids having to call my wife to come and get me because I'd taken my tablets, and that again, like, that's their lasting memory of their dad, come to stumble in the room and mumble a good night and all that sort of stuff to them. And then as I said, the effect that I had on my daughter, which unfairly I did, was not meaningfully but unfairly blaming her for my, like, that was one incident. Like, I got that many, and that's and it wasn't the worst one that I've attended either. That's the thing, like, there's so many things that have come from it, but it wasn't the worst one. It was just the one that broke the back. And even if I had a daughter at that stage, it may have still been the one that broke my back at that point. Like, I'd been to a number of things over the years, suicides, hangings, train fatalities, car fatalities, cot deaths, so many different things. There was going to be something at some point in time where something was going to break inside me. And that was just it. I just think it was just like a perfect storm, like just the fact that, like, the toys that was like Rachel's, and that just, as I said, just where my personal life and my work life were separate, they merged.
Yes.
And I think that's what contributed to it being the thing that snapped
Yeah.
within me in terms of coping with the trauma of what we see and what we do.
That was really interesting what you just said. Your private life and your work life merged, because I think you do separate the two. Once them two merge together, there's no unwinding that then.
No.
It all just becomes it becomes your identity then, and you start to then
Yep.
live. You don't know what's work and what's home, and both go with you wherever you go.
It didn't, as I said.
That's really interesting what you just said then.
But it's and that's what I reckon, it was that merging of my lives coming together.
Yeah.
And I said, even when I was at the scene, it was like an out-of-body experience. It was the weirdest feeling I've ever had. And it was because I think I couldn't separate my work life and my personal life at that point.
Yes.
I couldn't get into that, and you know what it's like when you're at the job, you just get into that zone. Like all your training and all your experience, you're on autopilot, you just get the job done. And I think that's what got me through the job, was the fact that I was still able to manage to be on autopilot and just get the job done.
Just robotic.
It is robotic, and I think that's just that conditioned into you, that you're able to, you know what, you've got to call this in, you've got to do that, you've got to have this done, and all that sort of stuff. That just becomes robotic, and it's repetition. Like with any training, that the more you do it, it just becomes second nature. You know? And that's the whole reason why you train and you do things repetitively. So it does become. But this one was just, as I said, like just seeing the mum and dad on there, knowing that I was a dad, and I said, yeah, my worlds collided that day.
And so many triggers from that one job.
Oh, massive triggers from that one, and that's the thing. Like they're the ones I'm aware of and I can manage. There's other triggers from other jobs as well, and that's the thing. Like it's you go down the street or you go out or you go do something, and you're always mindful of your triggers.
Yes.
And I can't picture a day. Well, I think we had this discussion a long time ago. I can't remember when I was just truly at peace with myself and totally happy. And I think I had to go back all the way to school or whatever it was to think of a time when I didn't have to have any stress about something freaking me out in the community or scaring me, or like, even now, I've been out of the cops since 2012, and you've still got that hypervigilance. You know, you're still on edge. I'm never totally relaxed. I wouldn't even know what that feeling is like anymore.
Yep.
To be completely just not care. You know, like if I go to a coffee shop now, I've still got to sit with my back so I can see what's going on. You know, I can't totally relax just going for a coffee.
Yeah.
And it's tiring. And then when you have nightmares and you get lack of sleep, and then you're exhausted during the day, it just feeds into all your emotions and stuff like that. It's absolutely exhausting.
Yeah. Do you have one thing that you can share that does help you manage at the moment with the triggers or that feeling, or when you feel those feelings, those bad feelings come up inside you? Is there one thing that you can share that helps?
Mate, the thing that I learned, I've trained and exercised all my life and all that sort of stuff, and it's helped keep me healthy and stuff like that, but that has been my biggest coping mechanism. Like, it's become more than just like trying to keep fit and healthy and that, or it's actually been healthy mind. If I can get when I train and stuff like that, I can get that release, and it's a healthy release. It's not like I'm going to go and smash a wall or something like that, or, you know, you take out that anger and frustration on something else. It's because you're exerting yourself physically in that, and you're cleansing your mind mentally too, because you're just focusing in purely on your training.
Yes.
And I've got to a point where I've spoken to a bloke who's become a really good mate of mine, who runs a health shop, and he does training for people and stuff like that, and he's helped me focus in on my diet, and that gives me that mind focus as well of, you know, watching what I eat and stuff like that. So I'm doing things healthily instead of going back to the old days of just eating takeaway foods and drinking and all that sort of stuff. I'm a lot more mindful about what I consume these days and how I train.
Yep.
And it's not just for the looks or anything, it's purely for internal.
Yes.
It's my internal health that I need to look after, and that's the way I do it, is through, I'll train excessively sometimes. Like in summer, those really hot days, I'll go to the Jamo Park and I'll run when it's 45 degrees at 1 o'clock in the afternoon when it's the hottest part of the day, just purely to exhaustion. But it's just, and whether it's like self-harming or something like that, but
Yeah,
I
you're
just
punishing
needed
yourself.
it is a punishment. But I need to get that out of my system, and it's a lot better than possibly cutting up or going and polishing off a bottle of vodka or something like that. And it's a balance too, because the doctors have said, you know, you've got to be mindful of how far you push yourself doing that, because that is also unhealthy if you're doing that. But they understand that that's possibly a more positive way of doing something.
Yeah. It's a healthier way of getting rid of that head noise.
Yeah, well,
getting that energy out.
Oh, it's massive, mate. Well, the benefits of exercise have always been there.
Yeah.
But in terms of mental health, and I actually, when I was in St John of God, they've actually increased the gym program there, and they've actually got an exercise therapist in there now, because they've seen the benefits of working people with mental health illnesses, predominantly PTSD, and the benefits of what exercise does in terms of being a form of mindfulness, a form of treatment, and like for the effects of it.
Yeah.
And it's actually part of the program now, where I think they actually spend a day going through healthy options, you know, your dieting, your exercising, and even if it's just go for a walk or something like that, it's just something, but it's the benefits there, not only health benefits, but mentally as well. So
yeah, absolutely.
So I do resort to that, and also, mate, sometimes I'll just put a set of headphones on and that mindfulness, just really just listen to my music, like my music's soothing, and I just try and focus in on an instrument or something like that in the music. And
I
just
found that interesting what you said. So we've spoken about it before, whereas to try and alleviate the what ifs and the issues that you're having in your head, you put some music on, but you'll focus just on the guitar.
Yeah, I'll pick an instrument and I'll just
pick
focus
an instrument
on that.
and just focus on that, and that then the whole song can go by. But you've been giving that one instrument all of your attention, and it just gets you out of your mind.
Yeah. It gets like, you get so much clutter in your mind, like all the the thoughts, they're just like they're racing around, like, and they're just, it's like dodgem cars, I suppose. They're all just banging off each other and stuff like that. And that's just one thing that you can just. And I've tried all the mindfulness, like sitting out and listening to the sounds and that, but then it only takes like hearing a siren or something like that, and then that's it. It's done. It's over. The exercise is useless for me. And then even in the hospital, you'll hear someone talking and that, and I just can't get that full total focus. So then I had to try and find something that could just ground me, and I could then really zone in on. And I thought, well, I love music, so I just started listening to music, and then I don't even remember what song it was, but they started off with a really good bass to start with, and I thought, well, I'll just listen to that to the whole song. And then I found myself just listening to that, and all my other thoughts just were going. Yeah. So just from that accidentally sort of coming across it, I thought that's the best way of, for me personally, of coping and grounding myself, is to just purely focus in on one instrument and just listen to that. Yeah. So,
music and exercise.
Yeah, pretty much.
Definitely not obviously work for everyone, but definitely two things that both of them work for me as well. Yeah, so I can back you up on that for sure.
And not only the exercise, you don't have to go to a gym or anything. No. Mate, like, go for a walk out in nature. Like, there's another, like, just to see and appreciate what actually is around. Like, like, you only have to look at the backdrop here, how beautiful it is. Like, learn to appreciate the simple things. Yeah.
Before we go on, I just wanted to just ask you, we spoke about part of your therapy with the triggers and that job, you actually had to go back to the scene.
Yes.
Can I ask you what that was like?
Yeah.
And how that come about?
I was actually in therapy at St John of God Hospital. They do a program up there called the Close program, where there's only 4 of us in the program, and for a whole month, the 4 of you work on. You've got to form a bond, so you form a fairly close bond with these 4 people, and you pretty much go through the trauma. And the whole month, because there's so much work involved in it, you just focus on one trauma. So my trauma was the Braidwood incident, and had to go through all the different factors into it. Like, I've spoken about so many different factors there. So for the whole month, you're just talking that, and you get one-on-one attention. You get a lot more than what you do when you do a normal stay out there. And a part of that was some people, like, I had two army vets in there, so they obviously couldn't go back to their scene and stuff like that, but spoke about the other people that were on there. He was, I think it was Ambos, and he actually found benefit in going back to a scene or visiting somewhere that caused him so much grief. And I actually became good friends with one of the professors up there, up at the hospital, and he said, look, I think it might be beneficial if you were to go back to the scene and just take it in and just try and, I guess, just feel it without being in a negative way. And I went down there on a Sunday. I got leave from the hospital to go down there, so I drove.
Was anyone with you?
Diane came down with me.
Yep.
She stayed in town. She didn't want to come out to the scene or anything like that, which was fair enough. So I drove out to the scene, and then when I was out at the scene, Professor Zach had given me his personal mobile number, and I rung him, and he was at a family barbecue, and he said, I don't care. And he spoke to me for about 40 minutes while I was at the scene. Just spoke to me, like, let me explain what I was feeling, and he spoke to me about how, you know, that is normal, and things like that. But it was therapeutic in a way, but it was also disturbing in a way, because when I was there were still pieces of the vehicle.
Wow.
The grass had grown over, and I was just walking around, and I tripped on a bit and kicked it, and there was a bit of the bloody siding of the car and all that sort of stuff. And I'm just thinking, after all these years, and there was a plaque on the tree, and, you know, some dead flowers, so obviously the family had continued to visit and that there, but there were still remnants of the vehicle that were still there, and I found that upsetting.
Yeah.
And I spoke to the professor about that, and he said, yeah, that would be a bit disturbing and stuff like that. But and that's the thing, like, people driving past on the highway, like, life still goes on.
Life still goes on.
And people driving past, and they'd have just seen this person standing at the side of the road looking at this tree and crying, not fully understanding it, and they'd probably seen the flowers, and they probably thought, well,
yeah,
I was the family member, or, you know, not knowing that I was actually the policeman that was at that scene and stuff like that. I don't know if other police have done that or whatever it is, but it's the only time I've ever been to Braidwood since then. I went down there for it. I haven't been, but I've wanted to go back down there because I do have some good memories, or not some, I have a lot of good memories of being at Braidwood. It was a beautiful town. The people made me feel very welcome down there. They made my whole family, Diane and Rachel, feel very welcome down there. We were part of the community, played sports down there. Di was involved in things down there, but that one incident just changed everything.
Yeah.
But to go back to the scene, it was therapeutic in a way, but it was disturbing in a way too. As I said, like, there's still parts of it that were still there, and that's the thing, like, when you go to an accident, you can't really fully clean it up. And I wonder if, you know, the parents have been back there and they've seen parts of the car, and well, that's where they lost their son out. Like, I know they've obviously got a place where he's buried and stuff like that, but that's actually where they lost him.
Yeah.
So, well, both parents lost him. So,
do you look back now? Do you feel it was helpful? Would you do it again if that was?
To go back to the scene?
Yeah.
No, probably not.
Yeah.
It was difficult. I don't think it changed the outcome of my therapy in that.
Okay.
Because I was always aware the scenes that they're still there now. If I was to drive past it, like, I drive past accident scenes where there's been fatals now, and yeah, you think about it, so it's not going to change that thought process and that, and it didn't eradicate any of those thoughts. So
okay.
On the day when I spoke to the professor and that, it sort of helped me gain a bit of clarity on certain aspects, but nothing really to do with, I don't know if I needed to be at the scene for that.
Okay.
I think that could have just been done in any setting, really.
Yep.
It didn't bring closure. And even at the end of the program, we did like a bit of a ceremony. Like, some people wanted to get rid of something. Like, we had a burning ceremony where we'd get rid of something that was symbolic of that, to try and say, look, I'm letting go of that trauma. And one of the counsellors got me a bloody old Nokia phone, and I just smashed the shit out of it and that. But yeah, it felt good doing it, but it hasn't brought closure to it. So
yeah,
there's all these things that you can do, but it's not as easy or as textbook as that, but it's just with the PTSD and the traumas and triggers and stuff like that, it's just ongoing management. Like,
Yes.
I've got to a state now where I've just got to accept that that's just the way it's going to be, and I've just got to work through it. Like, I've got to be able to identify it,
Yeah.
and once I've identified it, then just not let it freaking consume me. And then, as you said, go and do one of those mindfulness practices, go and exercise, do something like that. Do something in a positive way.
Yeah.
To make that negative thought into a positive type thing. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's the thing, I'll never forget it. And as much as I want to try to, and I can talk about it now only because I've did so much bloody therapy in regards to it, but the triggers are still there.
Yes.
Every time, I thought, I came out of the hospital thinking, you know, no more triggers, I'll be able to, but as soon as I saw one of the triggers, or, you know, straight away I was just thinking about it. And then it's just, even now, it's just, like, that was years and years ago I did that, and it still has an effect on me now. Like, I still get emotional, upset about it now, thinking about it. And
Yeah.
I think it's just something I've learned to accept that's just going to be a part of me for the rest of my life. And
Yeah. That's a big thing too. It's okay to cry.
yeah, mate, I'll be, like, the last couple of weeks, like I'm not going to go into now because we're talking about this, but, and you're fully aware of the issues I've had over the last 4 or 5 weeks, and mate, I reckon I could probably count on one hand the days that I haven't cried.
Yeah.
I went into town on Friday for an independent assessment, and mate, I was left a mess. I walked around Sydney crying for 2 hours. And that's the thing, it's an emotion, same as anger, same as laughter. It's just an emotion, and to deny it, it's going to come out in some other form, and it's going to be an unhealthy form more than likely.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
And as you said, there's no shame in crying, mate. Everyone cries. As I said, the ones that go to all these things and bottle it all up and say they don't cry and stuff like that, mate, they're even not human, or mate, they're very good at masking and lying, because I just don't know how a sane human person could see the crap or deal with the crap that we've had to go through, or any emergency personnel or defence personnel has had to endure, and not be affected by it in some way.
100%.
You cannot be affected. So,
well, mate, it's a credit to you that you keep showing up and you keep fighting every day. And
it's a battle.
It is, yeah.
It's a battle.
But again, this is our way of trying to support each other and trying to reach out to anyone who's might be suffering the same things that we're all going through it, and it's okay. We'll get there.
Mate, we will, and the biggest thing is too, mate, like in terms of reaching out, a lot of people have got to realise that no, the department, government, insurance company, they're not going to be the ones that are going to reach out to you. They're not going to support you. But a lot of the time, and I took it for granted and I didn't see it either, my support was right there in front of me. It was my wife, my kids, and I pushed her away. I tried to find any reason to blame her that she wasn't supportive and stuff like that. It was just me not wanting to take her support and stuff like that for whatever reason. But it was there. I just chose not to accept it or take it. And I think if people out there that are struggling, if they actually speak with their partners, they'll probably be surprised at the response they get. They might actually, get that support, and even that step to being led into the right area of support. It might just come from the person they've already got there, and not because if you're going to sit back and wait for the department to give it, you're going to be sorely disappointed.
Yeah. And we like to protect the people, friends and families, but at the end of the day, they do know us the best, and they can be the greatest form of support.
They do, and pretty much they're with us because they love us. They see the changes in you. Like, we're kidding ourselves if they can't see that you've changed, or there's something not right with you and stuff like that. And then to not embrace that and to allow them to come in and just to think that it's nice to think that we're protecting them and that, but we're doing ourselves more damage, and we're doing the relationship more damage.
Yes.
And that's the thing, like, a relationship is about communicating, and it is sharing feelings and experiences and stuff like that. And once you start denying the other person that, then you start losing your relationship.
100%.
So, and that's the thing, people just got to realise that you can't wait for the support to come, because the department, any department, government department, it's just not coming. And if it is, it's just token, it's not genuine, and it's not going to be followed up with. You'll probably get one bit of assistance and that's it.
Yep.
But if you've got a partner and they're a genuine partner, they're there for life if you do it right.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can get through it. It's just, but you got to communicate it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, mate, I really appreciate you sharing everything. I know how hard that is. We might leave it there, and because we're going to do another one later this week.
Okay.
Because there's a lot in that,
Yeah.
and rather than, that's a pretty heavy story. There's a lot to unpack from that, and if people watching, it's going to expose a lot of things in them possibly. So we'll just keep it there, and obviously we're going to do far more episodes and share a lot more of our experiences and the effects that go on. So if anyone does want to reach out to us, you can email theblackwallway@gmail.com, or you can direct message me on Instagram, which is at Craig_Gibson 75. Call it there.
Yeah, mate.
And again, Mark, we'll sit and chat for a little bit after this, and just really appreciate you sharing that and being willing and open and vulnerable to share that, because it's a big step.
No, mate, it is. But you're one of the true people and genuine people that actually sits and listens to. And I'm not just blowing smoke up your butt, nothing like that. I've noticed that since we've reconnected over that, mate, you genuinely listen and you take the time and do that. And that's comforting, because you know that you're being heard.
Yep.
And for someone to know that they've actually been heard and understood makes a huge difference. You could talk to someone and they'll just respond because they feel they have to respond, but they haven't actually listened. You can pick up on that as well, but to be actually heard and understood makes a huge difference. So I appreciate you taking the time, because I know there was things you wanted to talk about today as well.
Oh, mate, we've got plenty of...
And I know that's going to come up in other episodes as well. So
plenty of episodes to go, mate, and between the two of us, we've got 32 years of jobs and feelings and emotions to discuss. But I feel that it's an hour 20 already of there's a lot of emotion involved in that you sharing that, plenty of time, and that's the thing, listening is the best thing anyone can do for another person. I don't know what to say sometimes when we're talking, and then when I'm talking with other people, but just being able, everyone wants to be seen, they want to be heard, and they want to know that what they are saying matters. Yeah. So if you can just keep those three things in mind when you're talking with anyone, it's going to have a greater impact on relieving anxiety and stress and depression and feeling of lost and having no connection. It's just going to alleviate that somewhat. And the better our relationships are, the better our lives are going to be. And I really have learned through my experiences, it's all about listening more than anything.
100%.
So, mate, appreciate that. Thank you.
No, mate, I appreciate you listening, mate.
It's the same with you.
So.
All right, mate. Thank you. So we're going to do another one Thursday?
Mate, we'll do another one Thursday,
all right,
definitely.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Mark.
No dramas. Thanks, mate.